The old house groaned like a dying man. Outside, the storm screamed. Rain hit the windows like handfuls of rocks. We were trapped, all of us, on a small island that the world had forgotten. A flash of lightning lit up the room, white and angry. For a second I saw 7 faces, all pale and scared. Then darkness swallowed us again. When the lights finally flickered back on, they showed us something terrible. Mr. Silas Harland was on the floor. He was not sleeping. He was dead. I had seen dead men before. I had seen men shot, men who had fallen from high places, and men who had simply closed their eyes and drifted away. But I had never seen anything like this. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. But it was his mouth that made my stomach turn. It was open, stretched into a silent scream. A thick, black juice, like old oil, had leaked from the corners of his lips. It made a small, sticky lake on the expensive rug. His skin was the color of old, sour milk. I walked closer, my shoes sticking a little with each step. The air was thick with the smell of rain, dust, and something else. Something sweet and sick, like flowers rotting. I knelt beside the body. The side of his head looked wrong. It was not smooth. It looked like a smashed pumpkin, a soft, dented shape hidden under his gray hair. I did not touch it, not yet. I looked up at the 7 people standing around the room. They were like statues, frozen in fear. The business partner, the wife, the daughter, the old friend, the quiet housekeeper, and the stranger nobody knew. And me, the detective who was supposed to be on vacation. I stood up and my voice was cold and hard. "Nobody leaves this room," I said. "Nobody touches anything." The storm roared outside as if it agreed with me. In that moment I knew 2 things. One of them was the killer, and the night was just beginning. Fear has a smell. It is sharp and sour like old sweat and bad dreams. The room was full of it. I looked at each of them, one by one, trying to see past their masks. First there was Mrs. Eleanor Harland, the wife. She stood by the fireplace, her back straight and stiff. She did not cry. Her eyes were dry and cold like chips of ice. She looked at her dead husband on the floor, then looked away as if he were a piece of trash she had just noticed. A woman who has just lost her husband should be screaming or crying. She was doing neither. That was not right. Next to her was Victor Sterling, the business partner. He was a big man, but he seemed to be shrinking. Sweat ran down his face, even though the room was cold. He kept wiping his hands on his pants, over and over. His eyes darted around the room, never looking at the body for more than a second. He looked like a mouse trapped in a box with a snake. Then there was Lydia, the daughter. She was young and beautiful with long, dark hair. She was crying, but it was a quiet, pretty kind of crying. Her tears looked like tiny diamonds on her cheeks. She held a handkerchief to her mouth and her shoulders shook. But her eyes, when they met mine for a second, were not just sad. They were angry. Dr. Alastair Reed, the best friend, stood near the window. He was a doctor, or he used to be. He looked old and tired. He stared at Mr. Harland's body with a strange look on his face. It was not shock. It was not sadness. It looked like interest, like he was looking at a puzzle he wanted to solve. In the corner, almost hidden in the shadows, was Agnes Finch, the housekeeper. She was a small, thin woman who looked like a ghost. She had been with the family for years. She held a dusty rag in her hands, twisting it and twisting it. She did not look at anyone. She just stared at a dark spot on the wall as if she was trying to disappear into it. And finally there was the stranger. No one seemed to know his name. He had arrived just before the storm, a man with a dark coat and a tired face. He stood apart from the others near the door. He looked calm, too calm. He watched me, his eyes dark and unreadable. He was a question mark in a room full of secrets. 7 people, 1 body, a storm that locked us all in. I felt a cold chill run down my back. It was not from the storm, it was from the people in that room. One of them was a killer, and I was locked in with them. "The room is a crime scene," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "I want everyone to go to the library and wait for me there. Do not talk to each other. Do not even look at each other. Just sit and think about where you were when the lights went out." They moved like robots, their faces blank. They filed out of the room and I locked the door behind them. The key felt heavy in my pocket. Now I was alone with the dead man. I started with the room. It was a big, fancy room with a high ceiling and dark wood walls. A fire was dying in the fireplace. A half-empty glass of wine sat on a small table. I sniffed it. It smelled like wine and something else, something bitter. I looked around the body. There was not much blood, just the black stuff from his mouth and a small, dark stain in his hair where his head was smashed. But near his outstretched hand I saw something, a tiny piece of shiny metal. It was small, no bigger than my fingernail. I carefully picked it up with my handkerchief and put it in my pocket. A clue, maybe. Then I went to the library. It was another dark room, filled with books that no one ever read. The 7 of them were sitting in chairs, far apart from each other. The air was thick with hate and fear. I started with the wife, Eleanor. "Where were you when the lights went out?" I asked. "I was right here," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "I was talking to Victor." I looked at Victor. He nodded too quickly. "Yes, that's right. We were talking about business." I turned to the daughter, Lydia. "And you?" "I was by the window," she said, her voice a soft whisper. "I was watching the storm." Dr. Reed spoke up, his voice raspy. "I was getting a drink. I was at the bar in the corner." Agnes, the housekeeper, just shook her head. "I was cleaning the fireplace," she mumbled, not looking at me. The stranger was last. "I was standing by the door," he said, his voice low and even. "I was about to leave the room." 6 people, all in the same room, all with a different story, but something was wrong. Their stories were too simple, too neat. They sounded like they had practiced them. I looked at the fireplace. Agnes said she was cleaning it, but there was a thick layer of dust on the mantel. I looked at the bar. Dr. Reed said he was getting a drink, but the bottles were all closed and dusty. Lies, all of them. They were all lying. The house was not just a crime scene. It was a house of lies. I decided to talk to them one by one. I sent the others away and kept Mrs. Harland in the library. She sat in a big leather chair, looking small and fragile, but her eyes were not fragile. They were hard and sharp. "Your husband is dead, Mrs. Harland," I said, watching her closely. "How do you feel?" She looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. It was not sadness. It was anger. "He was a difficult man," she said, her voice tight, "but he was my husband." "Difficult how?" I asked. She hesitated. "He had secrets. He was not kind." She looked down at her hands, which were folded in her lap. I saw a long, red scratch on the back of her right hand. It was fresh. "You have a scratch on your hand," I said, my voice casual. She pulled her hand back quickly, hiding it in the folds of her dress. "It's nothing," she said. "I did it in the garden this morning. A rose bush." A rose bush, in the middle of a storm, on an island where everything was dead or dying. Another lie. "Where were you, really, when the lights went out?" I pressed. "I told you, I was with Victor," she said, her voice rising a little. "We were discussing a business deal." "What kind of deal?" I asked. "It's private," she snapped. "It has nothing to do with this." I leaned forward. "Mrs. Harland, your husband has been murdered. Everything has something to do with this." I let the silence hang in the air. She stared at me, her jaw tight. She was a wall of ice, but I could see the cracks starting to form. "I need to see my daughter," she said finally, her voice suddenly weak. She tried to stand up, but her legs trembled. She put a hand to her head and a single tear rolled down her cheek. It looked perfect, like a tear in a movie, but it did not feel real. It was a widow's tear, shed not for her dead husband but for herself. She was not sad, she was scared. And scared people do desperate things. Next was Victor Sterling. He came into the room like a man walking to his own hanging. He was sweating even more now, and his face was pale. He sat down on the edge of the chair, ready to run. "You were talking to Mrs. Harland when the lights went out," I said. "About business." Yes, that's right," he said, his voice shaky. He kept glancing at the door as if he expected the killer to walk in at any moment. "What kind of business?" I asked the same question I had asked the wife. Just a deal, a new project, he stammered. Silas was going to invest. I looked at him. Was he, or was he going to fire you? Victor's eyes went wide. What? No, who told you that? A little bird, I said. A little bird told me that you and Mr. Harland had a big fight this morning, that he was going to ruin you. He started to tremble. It was a misunderstanding, he whispered. We were going to work it out. I stood up and walked to the fireplace. The fire was almost out, just a few red embers glowing in the dark, but I could smell something. The faint, sharp smell of burnt paper. What were you burning in the fireplace, Victor? I asked, not turning around. He was silent. I turned and looked at him. His face was a mask of pure terror. It was nothing, he said, his voice barely a squeak. Just some old papers, trash. Trash, I repeated. You were burning trash in the fireplace of a man who had just been murdered, in a room full of people. Does that sound like something an innocent man would do? He didn't answer. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The smell of fear was so strong in the room now, it was almost choking me. He was hiding something, something big, something worth burning. I took the small piece of metal out of my pocket and held it up. Do you know what this is? I asked. He squinted at it. It looks like part of a watch. It is, I said, a broken watch. I found it near the body. I watched his face carefully. He looked confused but not guilty, not of this anyway. I sent him away. I needed to think. A lying widow with a fresh scratch, a terrified business partner who was burning evidence, and a dead man with a silent scream on his face. The puzzle was getting bigger and the pieces were not fitting together. Not yet, but I had a feeling they would. And when they did, the picture they made would be very, very ugly. Dr. Alistair Reed was next. He walked in with a calm, slow step. He was the only one who did not seem afraid. He seemed ready. You are a doctor, I said. Did you check Mr. Harland? I did, he said, sitting down. Right after the lights came back on, he was gone, no pulse, no breath. And the cause of death? He paused. He looked at me with his cold, gray eyes. It is hard to say without the right tools, but I saw the black liquid. I saw the way his face was frozen. It looked like a very fast, very strong poison, something that attacked his nerves. What about the injury to his head? I asked. He frowned a little. Yes, that is strange. A severe blow to the temple. It was not the cause of death, I think. The poison was too fast, but it was a bad injury. It looked like someone hit him with something heavy and hard. Did you try to help him? I did, he said. I tried to turn him over to clear his airway, but it was too late. I looked at his hands. They were long and thin, the hands of a surgeon. They were clean, too clean. You said you were at the bar when the lights went out, I said. That is correct. I was pouring myself a drink. But the bottles are dusty. The glasses are clean. It looks like no one has used that bar in weeks. He did not flinch. I keep my own bottle in my room. I brought a glass with me. I was just adding ice from the bucket on the bar. It was a good answer, too good. It was a lie that had been thought about. You were Mr. Harland's best friend, I said. A bitter smile touched his lips. We were friends a long time ago, before he became Silas. He ruined my life, detective. He ruined my career. He told lies about me that cost me my license. I came here tonight because he sent me a letter. He said he wanted to make things right. I did not believe him, but I had to come. So you hated him, I said. Hate is a strong word, the doctor said, looking at his hands. Let's just say I was very, very happy to see him dead. He was the first one to tell the truth about his feelings. But was it the whole truth? Or was it a way to hide a bigger, darker secret? I let him go. The doctor was a man who knew how to hide things, and he knew how to make a death look like something else. Lydia Harland, the daughter, came in next. She was still crying, but the anger in her eyes was stronger now. My father was a monster, she said, before I could even ask a question. He was a cruel, selfish man. He deserved to die. Her words were like a slap in the face. That is a terrible thing to say about your own father, I said. It is the truth, she shot back. He was going to cut me out of his will. He was going to leave me with nothing. He said I was weak and spoiled. He said I was not worthy of his money. Did you fight with him tonight? Yes, we fought right before dinner. I told him I wished he was dead. I told him I hated him. She put her face in her hands and sobbed. But I didn't kill him, I didn't. I waited for her to calm down. Where were you when the lights went out? I was by the window in the main room. I was watching the storm. I was trying to cool down. Did you see anyone near your father? She shook her head. No, it was dark, and the storm was so loud. I looked at her hands. They were small and delicate. Could these hands hold a heavy object and smash a man's head? Maybe. Anger can make a person strong. Lydia, I said softly, did you bring anything with you tonight that could be used as a weapon? She looked confused. Like what, a knife? No, something heavy, something like a paperweight or a letter opener. Her eyes went wide. She looked truly scared now. I don't know. I have a small silver letter opener in my bag. It was a gift from my mother, but I didn't use it, I swear. Where is it now? In my room, in my bag. I knew I had to check, but I had to finish the questions first. I looked at her, a young woman who hated her father so much she wished him dead. She had the motive, she had a possible weapon, and she had the anger. But she was also crying real tears now, tears of fear, not sadness. Go to your room, Lydia, I said, and stay there, do not leave. As she walked out, I noticed something on the floor near her chair, a small, dark smudge. I touched it. It was the black, sticky juice from the dead man. She must have stepped in it when she was near the body, but she said she was by the window. Another lie. Agnes Finch, the housekeeper, was the hardest to talk to. She was so quiet, so small. She sat on the edge of the chair, her eyes fixed on the floor. Agnes, I said gently, I need you to tell me where you were. I was cleaning the fireplace, she whispered. Her voice was thin like old paper. But the fireplace was dusty, I said. I checked. She looked up and her eyes were full of pain. I was going to clean it. I was just standing there looking at it. I was tired. Why did you lie? I didn't want to get in trouble, she said. Mr. Harland always yelled at me if I was not working. Mr. Harland is dead, Agnes. He can't yell at you anymore. She looked at me then, and there was a strange, cold light in her eyes. No, she said. He can't. Did you hate him? He was a bad man, she said simply. He treated me like dirt. He never paid me what he promised. He took things from me. What did he take? My mother's ring, she said, her voice shaking. It was the only thing I had left of her. He said I owed him money for a broken vase. He took the ring and said he would sell it. A clear motive, a deep, quiet hate. Agnes, when the lights went out, did you see anything, hear anything? She shook her head quickly. No, it was too dark, too loud. Did you see anyone near Mr. Harland? She paused. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to the floor. She was hiding something. I could feel it. Agnes, look at me. Tell me the truth. Did you see the killer? She started to tremble. I saw a shadow, a big shadow. It was moving fast. It was just before the lights came back on. What kind of shadow? A man's shadow. It was near the body, then it was gone. Which man? She squeezed her eyes shut. I don't know, I can't say. Please don't make me say. I knew she was lying about not knowing. She was terrified, not of me, but of the killer. The killer was still in the house, and Agnes knew who it was. I let her go, but I knew I would have to talk to her again. She was the ghost in the corner, the one who saw everything but said nothing. The last person was the stranger. He came in and sat down, calm as a stone. Your name, I asked. Marcus, he said, Marcus Harland. I stared at him. "Harland, you are related to the dead man." "He was my brother," Marcus said. "My older brother, Silas." This was a big surprise. None of the others had said anything about a brother. "Why did no one know you were coming?" "Silas and I had a fight a long time ago," Marcus explained. "He stole my family's money. He stole my name. He made me leave the country. I came back tonight because he sent me a letter. He said he was dying and wanted to give me back what was mine." He was dying. I looked at the doctor's earlier words, poison. That's what the letter said. He wanted to meet one last time. He wanted to make a new will. "Where were you when the lights went out?" "I was standing by the door. I was about to leave. I didn't trust him. I thought it was a trick." "Did you see the shadow Agnes saw?" He shook his head. "No, I saw nothing, just darkness." He was too calm, too perfect. A man who had just found his long-lost, hated brother dead, and he was not even shaking. "Marcus," I said, "you have a strong motive. He stole your life. Now he is dead and you can take it back." "I could," he agreed, "but I didn't kill him. I came here for money, not for blood." I looked at him. He was a man who had lost everything, a man who had nothing left to lose. That made him the most dangerous man in the room. "Stay in your room, Marcus," I said. "I will be checking on you." He stood up and walked out. I watched him go. The house was full of lies, but Marcus Harland's story felt like the biggest, darkest lie of all. I went back to the crime scene. I had to look closer at the body. I put on a pair of gloves and knelt down. The black liquid was thick and smelled of bitter almonds. The doctor was right. It was poison. A fast, terrible poison. I gently touched the side of Mr. Harland's head. The skin was broken. The bone underneath was soft, like wet clay. The blow was hard. It was not a small hit. It was a smash. I turned the body over. His back was stiff. His clothes were soaked with the black juice. I looked at his hands. His fingers were curled tight, holding something small and shiny. I carefully opened his hand. It was a piece of glass. A small, curved piece of glass, like from a broken mirror or a picture frame. I put it in a small bag. I looked at the floor again. The rug was thick. I ran my hand over the fibers near the body, and then I felt it, something hard and cold. I pulled it out. It was a heavy, silver letter opener. It was ornate, with a sharp point and a heavy handle shaped like a lion's head. It was the letter opener Lydia had talked about. It was covered in the black juice and a little bit of blood. I stood up holding the weapon. The poison was fast. The blow was hard. The doctor said the poison killed him, but the blow to the head was gruesome. It was a messy, angry hit. Why use both? Why poison a man and then smash his head? I looked at the body again, the smashed head, the black juice, the silent scream. It was not just a murder. It was a message of pure, dark hate. The killer wanted him to suffer. The killer wanted him to look terrible. I had the weapon. I had the motive. I had the lies, but I did not have the killer, not yet. I looked at the letter opener in my hand. It was Lydia's, but anyone could have used it. The killer was still in the house, watching me, and I knew that before the night was over I would find out who, and I knew that the truth would be darker than the storm outside. I took the letter opener and the small piece of glass to the kitchen. I needed a quiet place to think. The kitchen was cold and empty. I wiped the letter opener clean. It was heavy. It would make a terrible wound. I went back to Mr. Harland's study. I knew a man like him would keep secrets. I started looking. I checked the drawers, the books, the walls, nothing. Then I saw it. A small, locked box hidden behind a row of very old books. I broke the lock with a heavy paperweight. Inside there were 5 small envelopes. Each one had a name written on it. Victor Sterling, Mrs. Alina Harland, Lydia Harland, Dr. Alistair Reed, Agnes Finch. I opened Victor Sterling's envelope first. Inside was a picture of Victor shaking hands with a very scary-looking man. There was also a short letter. It said, Pay me $50,000 by Friday, or I send this picture to the police. They will want to know about your deals with the Black Hand gang. So Victor was not just losing his job. He was going to jail. His fear was real. I opened Mrs. Harlan's envelope. It had a copy of a bank statement. It showed that she had been sending large amounts of money to a secret account in another country. The letter said, "I know about your little friend in Paris. Pay me $100,000 or your life is over." The cold wife was not so cold after all. She had a lover, and Silas knew. Lydia's envelope had a picture of her driving a car very fast. The letter said, "I know you hit that man last year and drove away. Pay me $20,000 or I tell the police you killed him." Lydia was not just spoiled. She was a killer who got away with it. Dr. Reed's envelope had a copy of a medical report. It was about a patient who died on his operating table 10 years ago. The letter said, "I have the real report, the one that shows you were drunk when you did the surgery. Pay me $75,000 or your name will be mud forever." The doctor was not just disgraced. He was a drunk who killed a patient. Agnes Finch's envelope was the smallest. It had a picture of a small silver ring. The letter said, "I know where your mother's ring is. It is in my safe. If you ever try to take it, I will tell everyone about your time in the bad place when you were young." Silas Harlan was not just a cruel man. He was a monster. He had dirt on everyone. He had invited them all here to make them pay. He was a blackmailer, and one of them had decided to stop paying with money and start paying with blood. I went back to the library and called the suspects in one by one. I showed them their envelopes. The lies stopped. The fear became real. Victor Sterling cried like a baby. He was going to ruin me. I worked my whole life for this. Mrs. Harlan just stared at the bank statement. "He was a devil," she whispered. "A devil." Lydia turned pale. That man, he was already sick. It was an accident. Dr. Reed just nodded. "I was drunk. I was young and stupid. He found out and used it against me." Agnes Finch looked at the picture of the ring. Her eyes were full of a deep, quiet rage. "He had no right," she said. "No right. I had 5 people with a strong reason to kill, but I still did not know who did it, and I still did not know why the poison and the blow." I looked at the letter opener. It was Lydia's. I looked at the black juice. It was poison. I went back to Dr. Reed. "You said the poison killed him, but the blow to the head was bad. Why would the killer use both?" The doctor thought for a long time. "If you use poison, it is quiet, it is clean, it looks like a heart attack. If you use a heavy object, it is messy, it is loud, it is full of anger." So the killer wanted it to look like a heart attack, but then got angry and hit him. "Maybe," the doctor said, "or maybe 2 people did it. One poisoned him and the other hit him." 2 killers. That was a dark thought, but it made sense. "Who had the poison?" I asked. The doctor looked at Mrs. Harlan's file. She was sending money to Paris. Maybe she bought the poison there, a slow, quiet poison. "And who had the anger?" I looked at Lydia. She had the weapon. She had the anger, but she was young. I looked at Victor. He was a big man. He had the strength. He had the fear of going to jail. The puzzle was getting bigger, not smaller. I went back to the crime scene one more time. I looked at the small piece of metal I had found. It was part of a broken watch. I looked at the suspect's wrists. Mrs. Harlan wore a thin gold bracelet. Victor wore a big, expensive watch. Dr. Reed wore a simple leather strap. Lydia wore nothing. Agnes wore a cheap plastic watch. Victor's watch was a big, heavy thing. I asked him to take it off. It was whole. I looked at the piece of metal again. It was old. It was silver. It looked like a piece of a pocket watch. I remembered the stranger, Marcus Harland. He was the only one I had not checked. I went to his room. He was sitting on the bed, reading a book. "I need to see your watch, Marcus," I said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a beautiful, old silver pocket watch. It was very old, and it was broken. A small piece of the silver casing was missing. I took the piece of metal from my pocket and held it next to the watch. It fit perfectly. "Where did you get this watch?" I asked. "It was my father's," he said. "Silas stole it from me years ago. He gave it back to me tonight just before the lights went out. He said it was the only thing he had left of our father." "And it broke?" "Yes. When he gave it to me I was so angry. I threw it on the floor. It broke. I picked up the pieces." "Did you pick up all the pieces?" He looked at the small piece in my hand. "I thought I did. I must have missed that one." So Marcus was near the body. He was angry. He had a fight with Silas, but he said he was by the door. Another lie. "You were not by the door, Marcus," I said. "You were right next to him. You were fighting." He sighed. "Yes, we were fighting." He gave me the watch and I saw the look in his eyes. He was not sorry. He was laughing at me. He was still the same cruel man. I threw the watch. I yelled at him. Then the lights went out. "Did you hit him?" "No, I swear, I just yelled." When the lights came back on, he was on the floor. I saw the black stuff. I was scared. I ran to the door. He was telling the truth. I could feel it. He was angry, but he was not the killer. He was just another victim of Silas Harlan's cruelty. I went to Agnes Finch's room. I needed to find that ring. If Silas had it, it was another piece of the puzzle. Her room was small and clean. I found a small key hidden under her mattress. I went back to Silas's study. I found a small safe hidden behind a painting. The key fit. Inside the safe, there was a stack of money, a few old letters, and a small silver ring. It was beautiful with a small dark stone. It was Agnes's mother's ring. I took the ring and went back to Agnes. I held it out to her. "Silas is dead, Agnes," I said. "You can have your ring back." She looked at the ring and her eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time. She took the ring and held it tight. "He was a bad man," she whispered. "He made me do terrible things." "What terrible things, Agnes?" "He made me watch them," she said. "He made me listen to their secrets. He made me write them down. He used me to get the dirt on everyone." Agnes was not just the housekeeper. She was Silas's spy. She knew everything. "Agnes, you saw a shadow, a big shadow. You know who it was, tell me." She shook her head, tears running down her face. "I can't, he will kill me. He is still here." "He is already dead, Agnes. The killer is the only one left." "No," she said, her voice a terrified squeak. "There are two. One is dead, the other is still here." "Two?" "The one who killed Silas, and the one who is going to kill me." I felt a cold dread in my stomach. Two killers, or was she just confused? "Agnes, tell me the name of the man you saw." She looked at the ring in her hand. She looked at the door. She opened her mouth to speak. Before Agnes could speak, there was a loud, terrible crash from the hallway. It sounded like a heavy piece of furniture had fallen. I ran out of the room. The hallway was dark. The storm was still raging. I saw a large, old grandfather clock lying on the floor. It had been pushed over. I looked around. No one. I went back to Agnes's room. She was gone. The window was open and the cold rain was blowing in. I ran to the window and looked out. The ground was dark and muddy. I saw a small, dark shape running toward the woods. "Agnes," I yelled. A voice came from the end of the hallway. It was Dr. Reed. "What is going on, detective? What was that noise?" "The clock fell," I said, my heart pounding, "and Agnes is gone." "Gone? Where would she go in this storm?" "She was scared," I said. "She was about to tell me something important." I looked at the doctor. He was too calm. He was too close to the hallway. "Where were you, doctor?" "I was in my room," he said. "I heard the crash and came out." I looked at his hands. They were clean, but I knew he was a liar. They were all liars. I went back to the library. I looked at the 5 envelopes, 5 motives, 5 lies. I had the letter opener. I had the poison. I had the broken watch. I had the blackmail, and now I had a missing witness. I knew the killer was one of the five, but which one, or was it two? I sat down and put my head in my hands. The storm was a wall of sound. The house was a cage, and in that cage a killer was waiting. And I had a terrible feeling that Agnes was not the only one who was going to disappear tonight. The darkness was getting deeper, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Agnes was gone. The killer had made a move. I had to find her or the truth would be lost forever. I gathered the remaining suspects in the main room. Mrs. Harland, Victor, Lydia, Dr. Reed, and Marcus. Agnes Finch has run away, I told them. She was about to tell me who killed Mr. Harland. Victor looked scared. Lydia looked shocked. Mrs. Harland looked annoyed. Dr. Reed looked thoughtful. Marcus looked at the floor. We need to search the house, I said. She can't have gone far in this storm. We split up. I took Marcus with me. I did not trust him, but I needed eyes in the back of my head. We searched the main floor. Nothing. We went to the second floor. Nothing. The cellar, Marcus said. She might be hiding in the cellar. It's cold and dark down there. We went down the narrow stone steps. The air was heavy and smelled of dirt and old wine. I held my flashlight tight. The cellar was a maze of dark corners and old boxes. We walked past shelves of wine bottles and dusty furniture. Over here, Marcus whispered. He pointed to a dark room at the end of the cellar. It was a meat locker, a small room used to keep food cold. I pushed the heavy wooden door open. The air inside was freezing. I shone my light around. And then I saw him. It was Marcus, but it was not the Marcus standing next to me. It was the other Marcus, the one who was supposed to be in his room. He was lying on the cold stone floor. His dark coat was spread out like a broken wing. "Oh God," I whispered. The Marcus next to me let out a choked sound. "No, no, no, no." I knelt beside the body. This death was not quiet. It was not a mystery. It was a brutal, angry mess. He had been stabbed, not once but many times. So many holes in his chest, like someone had used him for a dart board. The blood was everywhere. It had frozen a little on the cold floor, making a dark, slick ice. His eyes were wide and white, staring up at the ceiling. They were full of pure terror. He had seen his killer. He had known what was coming. I looked at the Marcus next to me. He was shaking, his face pale. I was in my room, I swear, I was reading. "This is not you, Marcus," I said. "This is the man who was in your room, the man who said he was your brother." "But I am Marcus," he said, confused. "I am Marcus Harland." I looked at the dead man. He was wearing the same dark coat. He had the same tired face, but the man next to me was taller, stronger. "The man who died was Silas's brother," I said. "He was the real Marcus. Who are you?" The man next to me looked at the body, then at me. He took a deep breath. "My name is Thomas. I am a private investigator. Silas hired me. He knew someone was going to kill him. He wanted me to find out who." "And you used his brother's name?" "Silas wanted me to pretend to be his brother. He wanted to see who would react. He wanted to draw the killer out. It was a crazy plan, a deadly plan, and it had failed. The killer had found the wrong man, or maybe the right man. I left Thomas, the real investigator, to guard the body. I went back upstairs. The remaining suspects were waiting. "There has been a second death," I told them. "The man you knew as Marcus Harland is dead." The room went silent. "He was not Marcus Harland," I continued. "He was a private investigator hired by Silas. Silas knew one of you was going to kill him. He brought the investigator here to find out who." Victor gasped. Mrs. Harland put a hand to her mouth. Lydia just stared. Dr. Reed's eyes narrowed. "The killer made a mistake," I said. "They thought they were killing the real Marcus Harland, Silas's brother. They thought they were cleaning up a loose end." I looked at Dr. Reed. He was the smartest. He was the most controlled. "Dr. Reed," I said, "you were Silas's friend. You knew he had a brother. Did you see the real Marcus Harlan tonight?" "No," he said. "I have not seen Marcus in 20 years. I would not know him." "But you knew Silas was a blackmailer," I said. "You knew he was cruel. You knew he was capable of a plan like this." "Yes," he said, "I knew." I looked at the others. Victor was too scared to be a killer. Mrs. Harlan was too cold to be so messy. Lydia had the anger, but this was too much. I went back to the cellar. Thomas was still there, looking at the body. "Did you see Agnes?" I asked. "No," he said, "but I found something." He pointed to the wall near the body. There was a small, dark smear on the stone. It was not blood. It was the black juice. "The killer had the poison on them," I said. "They killed Silas and then they killed this man." "But why stab him so many times?" Thomas asked. "Silas was a clean kill. This is personal." "Anger," I said. "The killer was angry. They thought they were killing the man who had the most to gain from Silas's death. They thought they were killing the real brother." I looked at the body again. The sheer violence of the attack was shocking. It was not the work of a cold, calculating killer. It was the work of someone who had lost control. I went to the kitchen. I needed to find the murder weapon, the second one. The kitchen was big and full of sharp things. I looked in the drawers. I looked in the sink. And then I saw it. A large, sharp kitchen knife, hidden under a pile of dirty rags in the corner. It was covered in blood. I took the knife and went back to the main room. I held it up. "This is the knife that killed the second man," I said. "It is a kitchen knife. It was hidden in the kitchen." I looked at the suspects. Who was in the kitchen tonight? Victor shook his head. "Not me." Mrs. Harlan said, "I was in the library." Lydia said, "I was in the main room." Dr. Reed said, "I was in my room." Agnes Finch, the housekeeper, she was the one who was always in the kitchen. She was the one who ran away. "Agnes," I said, "she was the one who saw the killer. She was the one who ran away. She was the one who had the most reason to be in the kitchen." "But why would she kill the second man?" Thomas asked, coming into the room. "She was scared of the killer." "Maybe she was not scared," I said. "Maybe she was the killer." I looked at the knife. It was too heavy for Agnes. It was a big, strong knife. I looked at the suspects again. Victor was a big man. Dr. Reed was a strong man. I looked at Dr. Reed. He was staring at the knife. His face was pale. "Doctor," I said, "you are a man of science. You know how to make a death look like something else. You knew about the poison. You knew about the blow." He did not answer. He just stared at the knife. I went back to the library. I needed to think. Silas was killed by poison and a blow. The second man was killed by a knife. The killer had the black juice on them. I looked at the envelopes again. The motives. Victor, jail. Mrs. Harlan, lover. Lydia, hit and run. Dr. Reed, drunk surgery. Agnes, ring and bad past. I looked at the piece of glass I had found in Silas's hand. It was a small, curved piece of glass. I went to the main room. I looked at the window where Lydia said she was standing. It was a big window. I looked at the fireplace where Agnes said she was cleaning. I looked at the bar where Dr. Reed said he was getting a drink. I looked at the spot where Silas's body had been. I looked at the small, dark smudge on the floor near Lydia's chair. The black juice. Lydia had stepped in the black juice. She was near the body. She was lying. I went to Lydia's room. I found the silver letter opener. It was clean, but I had found the bloody one in the crime scene. I went back to the main room. I looked at the suspects. "Lydia," I said, "you were not by the window. You were near your father. You stepped in the black juice." She looked down at her shoes. I went to see if he was alive. I touched him." "You lied," I said. "You lied about the letter opener. You lied about where you were." She started to cry. "I hated him. I wanted him dead, but I didn't kill him." I looked at the piece of glass in my hand. It was curved. It was small. It was not from a window. It was not from a picture frame. I looked at Dr. Reed. He was wearing glasses. They were thick, round glasses. I walked up to him. "Dr. Reed," I said, "where are your glasses?" He reached up to his face. He was not wearing them. "I broke them," he said. "When I ran out of the library after the crash, I must have dropped them." I looked at the piece of glass in my hand. It was the piece of his broken glasses. He had been right next to Sela's. He had been the unseen witness. He had seen the killer, and the killer had seen him. But why would the killer leave a piece of glass in Sela's hand? It was a clue. A very small, very important clue. I looked at the knife. I looked at the letter opener. I looked at the black juice. The killer was smart, but they had made a mistake, a small, deadly mistake, and I was about to find out what it was. I held the small piece of glass up to the light. It was from Dr. Reed's glasses. He had been close to Sela's, so close that a piece of his broken glasses had ended up in the dead man's hand. "Doctor," I said, my voice low and hard, "you were not in your room when the clock fell. You were in the hallway. You pushed the clock over to scare Agnes away." He stared at me, his face a mask of stone. "That's a wild guess, detective." "Is it?" I said. "Agnes was about to tell me who she saw. You couldn't let that happen. You had to silence her." "I didn't touch her," he said, his voice cold. "No, you just scared her into running out into a deadly storm. And you were there when Sela's died. You were right next to him. You saw the killer." He was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the howling of the wind. "Yes," he said finally, "I saw the killer." The room went still. Everyone was looking at him. "Who was it, doctor?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "It was Agnes, Agnes Finch. She poisoned him. I saw her put something in his drink just before the lights went out. When they came back on, he was dead." It was a perfect story. The missing housekeeper, the one who hated Sela's, the one who knew all his secrets. It was too perfect. "And the blow to the head?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe she hit him in the dark. She was a small woman, but hate can make anyone strong." It was a lie, a smart lie, but a lie all the same. The doctor was trying to frame the missing woman. But why? Was he protecting someone, or was he protecting himself? I left the suspects in the library with Thomas, the other investigator. I had to find Agnes. She was the key. I went outside. The storm was a monster. The wind cut like a knife, and the rain was a cold, hard wall. I shone my flashlight into the darkness. The woods were a black, tangled mess. I followed the muddy tracks from the window. They led me into the trees. The branches grabbed at my coat like bony fingers. The ground was soft and wet. After a few minutes, I found her. She was huddled at the base of a large, old tree, shivering. Her clothes were soaked, and her face was white with fear. "Agnes," I said gently, "it's me, Detective Thorne. I'm not going to hurt you." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and terrified. "He's going to kill me," she whispered. "He said he would." "Who, Agnes? Who is going to kill you?" "The doctor," she said, her voice shaking. "Dr. Reed, he saw me. He knows I know." "What do you know, Agnes? What did you see?" She started to cry, her body shaking with sobs. "I saw him. I saw him kill Mr. Harland." "You saw Dr. Reed kill Mr. Harland?" "No," she cried. "Not him, the other one, the first one." I was confused. The first one. "The shadow," she said. "The big shadow I saw, it was Victor Sterling. He hit Mr. Harland with the letter opener. He hit him so hard." Victor, the scared, sweating business partner, he had the strength. He had the motive. He was going to jail. "And the poison?" I asked. "That was Mrs. Harland," Agnes whispered. "She put it in his wine. I saw her. She smiled when she did it." Two killers. A husband and wife team, working together to kill the man who was destroying them. It made a terrible kind of sense. "And Dr. Reed?" I asked. "Where was he?" "He was there," she said. "He was watching. He didn't do anything. He just watched. And when it was over, he came to me. He said if I told anyone what I saw, he would kill me. He said he would make it look like an accident. The doctor was not the killer. He was something worse. He was a silent partner, a man who watched a murder happen and did nothing, a man who used the chaos to get his own kind of revenge. I brought Agnes back to the house. She was cold and weak, but she was alive. I took her to her room and locked the door. Then I went to the library. The suspects were still there waiting. I looked at Dr. Reed. "Your game is over, doctor," I said. "I found Agnes. She told me everything." He did not look surprised. He just gave me a small, cold smile. "Did she? And what fairy tale did she tell you?" "She told me about Victor and Mrs. Harland. She told me how they killed Silas together, and she told me how you watched them do it." Victor turned pale. Mrs. Harland stood up, her face a mask of fury. "She's lying. The old woman is crazy." "Is she?" I said. "She saw you put the poison in the wine, Alina, and she saw you smash Silas's head, Victor. She saw everything." Victor started to crumble. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to scare him. He was laughing at me." "Mrs. Harland was made of stronger stuff. He deserved it," she said, her voice like ice. "He was a monster. We did the world a favor." I looked at Dr. Reed. "And you, what was your part in this?" "I did nothing," he said calmly. "I was a witness, an observer. I watched a monster get what he deserved. It was the most interesting thing I have seen in years." "You let a man die," I said, my voice filled with disgust. "You could have stopped them." "Why would I?" he asked, his eyes glinting. "Silas destroyed my life. I wanted to see him fall. I wanted to see him broken, and I did. It was beautiful." He was a monster just like Silas. A different kind of monster, but a monster all the same. "And the second man?" I asked. "The investigator who killed him?" Victor and Mrs. Harland looked at each other. "We didn't kill him," Victor said. "We didn't even know who he was." I looked at Dr. Reed. He was the only one left. "It was you, wasn't it, doctor? You killed the investigator." Dr. Reed laughed. It was a dry, empty sound. "Me? Why would I kill him? I have no reason." "You had every reason," I said. "You were enjoying your little game. You were watching the chaos. But the investigator was a wild card. He was smart. He was getting close to the truth. He was going to ruin your fun." I walked closer to him. "You followed him to the cellar. You thought he was the real Marcus Harland. You thought he was another loose end, so you killed him. You stabbed him over and over in a fit of rage, because you were losing control of your perfect little experiment." "You can't prove that," he said, his smile fading. "I can," I said. "The black juice, the poison from Silas's body, it was on the killer. There was a smear of it on the wall in the cellar, and there was a smudge of it on the floor near Lydia's chair. She stepped in it when she went to check on her father." I paused, but there was another smudge, a very small one, on the handle of the kitchen knife, the knife that killed the second man. I held up the knife which I had kept in a bag. "You were so careful, doctor. You cleaned your hands, you wore gloves, but you forgot one thing. When you killed Silas, you got a tiny drop of the black juice on your shoe. And when you went to the kitchen to get the knife, you left a tiny trace of it on the floor. And when you grabbed the knife, you transferred a tiny bit of that trace to the handle." I looked at his shoes. They were expensive leather shoes polished to a shine, but on the sole of his right shoe there was a small dark stain. "It's a small thing, doctor," I said. "A tiny piece of evidence, but it's enough. It connects you to both murders, the one you watched and the one you committed." His face went blank. The game was over. He had lost. Dr. Reed did not say anything for a long time. He just stared at the knife, then at his shoe. The smart, controlled man was gone. In his place was a cornered rat. Then he did something I did not expect. He smiled. A real smile this time, but it was a terrible thing to see. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "You are very clever, detective," he said. "Very clever indeed. Yes, I killed him, the investigator. He was a nuisance. He was spoiling my beautiful experiment. He looked at Victor and Mrs. Harland with contempt. These two fools. They were so easy to manipulate. All I had to do was plant the idea. A little whisper to Victor about how easy it would be to get rid of Silas. A little hint to Alina about a poison that leaves no trace. They were like puppets on a string. "And you were the puppet master," I said. "I was," he said, his eyes shining with a mad light. "I was the director of my own little play, a play of revenge, and it was a masterpiece." He suddenly lunged for the knife. He was fast, but I was faster. I kicked the table over and the knife went flying across the room. Thomas, the other investigator, grabbed him from behind, pinning his arms. Dr. Reed struggled, his face twisted with rage. "You ruined it," he screamed at me. "You ruined my perfect ending." He was insane. The hate he had for Silas had eaten him alive, turning him into a monster who played with people's lives for his own sick pleasure. I looked at the three of them, the two killers who thought they were getting away with it and the mad doctor who had pulled their strings. The house was not just a house of lies, it was a house of monsters, and I had caught them all. With Dr. Reed held tight by Thomas, the fight went out of him. The madness in his eyes was replaced by a cold, empty calm. He started to talk. His voice was low and steady, as if he were a professor giving a lecture. "It was a symphony of destruction," he began, a small, proud smile on his lips. "And I was the composer. Silas took my life from me piece by piece. He turned my name into a joke, so I decided to do the same to him, but I wanted it to be slow. I wanted him to see it coming." He looked at Victor and Alina with disgust. These two were my instruments, my puppets. I knew Victor was weak, terrified of jail. I knew Alina was cold and greedy, desperate to keep her life of luxury. I just had to give them a little push. I told Victor that Silas was planning to send him to a prison where terrible things happened to men like him. I described the sounds he would hear at night, the screams, the fear. I painted a picture of a life that was worse than death. Victor sobbed, his big body shaking. He told me those things. "And Alina," the doctor continued, his eyes glinting. "I told her about a rare poison from a jungle flower, a poison that mimics a heart attack but is 1,000 times more painful. I told her Silas would feel every nerve in his body catch fire before he died. I told her he would be screaming on the inside, but unable to make a sound." Mrs. Harland turned a sickly shade of green. She had wanted her husband dead, but she had not wanted him to suffer like that. The doctor had played on her coldness, but he had added his own layer of cruelty. "I wanted them to act on the same night," he said. "I wanted the chaos, the poison and the blow, the perfect murder ruined by a moment of stupid, clumsy anger. It was art, my art." He confessed everything. How he had watched them, his heart pounding with joy. How he had broken his own glasses in the excitement and had to pretend it was an accident. How he had killed the investigator because the man was a flaw in his perfect design. "I was going to frame Agnes for it all," he finished, his voice full of pride. "The simple, quiet housekeeper. No one would have suspected. It would have been the perfect ending to my masterpiece." He was not just a killer. He was a monster who had enjoyed every second of his terrible work. He had not just wanted revenge. He had wanted to become a god, playing with the lives of mortals, and in his own twisted mind he had succeeded. The doctor's confession shattered the last bit of strength in Victor and Alina. The alliance they had formed in their hate for Silas broke apart, and they turned on each other like starving wolves. "It was his fault," Alina shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Victor. "He was the one who was supposed to just scare him. He was the one who got angry and hit him. He ruined everything." "Me?" Victor roared back, his face red with rage and tears. "You were the one who poisoned him. You were the one who wanted him dead all along. I just wanted to save my own skin. You wanted his money." They screamed at each other, their ugly secrets spilling out onto the floor. They had not been a team. They had been two selfish people using each other. Elinor had planned to run away with her lover in Paris, leaving Victor to take the fall for the murder. Victor had planned to steal a secret document from Silas's safe that would have ruined another company, making him rich. They were not just killers. They were greedy, selfish, and stupid. They were the perfect puppets for a man like Dr. Reed. I watched them, my stomach turning. The whole night had been a dance of monsters. Silas, the blackmailer, Victor and Elinor, the greedy killers, and Dr. Reed, the mad director who had made them all dance to his tune. Lydia, the daughter, watched them too. Her face was a mess of tears and disgust. She had hated her father, but she had never imagined this level of darkness. She was a part of this family, a part of this house of horrors, and that was a stain that would never wash away. Thomas, the other investigator, just shook his head. "I've seen some bad things in my job," he said quietly, "but this is something else." He was right. This was not just a murder. It was a look into the blackest parts of the human heart, and it was a look I would never forget. After we had locked the three killers in separate rooms, I went to see Agnes. She was sitting on her bed, wrapped in a warm blanket, holding her mother's ring. She was still scared, but the terror was gone from her eyes. She was a survivor. "They are caught, Agnes," I told her. "You are safe now." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw a small spark of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Can you tell me what happened?" I asked gently, "from the beginning." She took a deep breath and began to talk. She told me about the years of cruelty from Mr. Harland, how he had made her his spy, forcing her to listen to secrets and write them down, how he had laughed at her when he took her mother's ring. "He liked to hurt people," she said, her voice stronger now. "He liked to see them in pain. He was a man with a hole in his heart, and he tried to fill it by making other people miserable." She told me how she had seen Mrs. Harland put the poison in the wine, how she had seen Victor creeping up behind Silas with the heavy letter opener, how she had seen the life go out of Silas's eyes. "And the doctor, he was the worst of all," she said, her voice trembling a little. "He just stood there in the shadows, and he was smiling, a terrible, happy smile. He was enjoying it. It was like he was watching a movie." She told me how the doctor had cornered her later, his eyes cold and dead, how he had threatened to kill her if she ever told anyone what she saw, how he had pushed the clock over to scare her into running. "I thought he was going to kill me right there," she said. "I ran. I didn't know where I was going, I just ran." She had been the ghost in the corner, the silent witness. She had seen all the evil in that house, and she had survived it. She was the only one who had. As the first light of dawn began to break through the clouds, the storm finally died. The wind softened to a whisper, and the rain stopped. The world outside was washed clean. I heard the sound of a boat engine. The police had finally arrived. The long night was over. I watched as they took the killers away. Victor was crying, a broken man. Elinor was cold and silent, her face a mask of hate. Dr. Reed was smiling, still lost in his own twisted world. They brought out the bodies. First, the investigator zipped in a black bag, then Silas Harland. Even in death, his face was a mask of silent, screaming horror. Lydia watched from the window, her face pale. She was the last Harland left in the house of horrors her father had built. She was rich now, but she was also alone, and she would have to live with the memory of this night for the rest of her life. Agnes came out carrying a small bag. She was leaving the island for good. She looked at me, and for a moment her eyes were clear and strong. "Thank you," she said again. Then she walked down to the boat without looking back. I stood on the porch of the old mansion, the morning air cold and fresh. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. It was a beautiful morning, but the beauty felt wrong. It felt like a lie. I was the last one to leave the island. As the boat pulled away from the shore, I looked back at Blackwood Manor. It stood on the hill like a dark, rotting tooth, a monument to the evil that had happened inside. The truth was out, the killers were caught, justice had been served. That is what the papers would say, that is what people would believe. But I knew the truth was darker and messier than that. I had seen the monsters behind the masks. I had seen the greed, the hate, the madness. And I knew that the darkness I had seen on that island was not just in that house. It was in the world. It was in people. It was a part of us. I left the house just as the sun came up. The truth was out, but somehow it didn't feel like justice. Not that night. It felt like a warning. A warning that the real monsters are not the ones that hide in the dark. They are the ones that walk among us, smiling and waiting for their chance to play their own deadly games. And sometimes, even when you win, you still lose. The island was behind me, but I knew that a part of me would be trapped there forever in the house of broken promises, listening to the echo of a silent scream. The case was closed, but the story would never end. Not for me. Not ever.